And a man who sees a lot of it is our main man, Dan Horde. He has gone from Cincinnati to Boston to Tampa and back to Cincinnati within roughly 72 hours. Dan, welcome home, young man.
Thank you, sir. And I can confirm that Valley Forge is well worth the trip. My dad took me and my two older sisters to Valley Forge when I was young, probably 7 or 8 years old. And even at that young age, Dan Horde with hair found it very cool. So you should check it out.
I am definitely going to check it out. I'll be an empty nester this time next year. And so start getting out and doing some of that stuff. Let's start with UC. Look, some guys declared early. Coaching staff, part of it leaves with Luke Fickell. God bless Kerry Combs. He came in there trying to hold it all together. Was there anything to get excited about or get discouraged about, or you just sort of shove it off into its own little category of the game on Saturday?
I would say there's one thing to be excited about, and that is the fact that Louisville's defense is coming to Cincinnati, at least in terms of how it's coached and the strategy. Louisville was second in the nation in sacks this year. Obviously, the Bearcats couldn't block them on Saturday at Fenway. They sacked Evan Prater 7 times, 6 times in the first half. So if that's the style of defense and the type of players that Scott Satterfield and his defensive staff are going to be bringing to Cincinnati going forward, I think that is something to be excited about. It wasn't very exciting for Bearcat fans to watch on Saturday, but it could be going forward.
You know, Dan, I was just kind of curious. It's one thing to put a lot of faith into a young man who's making only a second start in a row since Ben Bryant got hurt, referring to Evan Prater. But what happened? Was Louisville's defense just that good, as you just pointed out? Or because, the UC has a very good offensive line and an experienced offensive line.
Kind of a perfect storm situation, Tom. So Louisville, like I said, number 2 in the country in sacks. How do they get them? They blitz the heck out of you. So in a lot of instances, they're bringing more guys than you can block, and you got to get rid of the ball quickly, and you've got to have it schemed up to deal with that kind of thing. So now you're in a bowl game where your top 5 receiving targets aren't there. The guys that ideally you would throw a short pass to that would turn it into a 70-yard touchdown, like Trey Tucker or Tyler Scott. Those guys are gone. Much of your offensive coaching staff is gone, so it's difficult to make adjustments in a game like that where the defense is doing things you don't see a lot. So I really think it was a perfect storm type of situation. I don't put it all on Evan Prater. It would have helped, I think, to have a more experienced quarterback to make the adjustments and deal with stuff like that. But that wasn't the case in that game, and obviously it was a difficult matchup for Cincinnati.
Okay, where is the program, Dan, in terms of recruiting? Whenever you have a coaching change, you're going to have guys that either leave and go with Luke Fickell, in this case up to Wisconsin. Guys will decommit, reopen the recruiting process. Where do you think UC is at this point in time?
Well, that's all Scott Satterfield and the coaches that he has brought with him to Cincinnati have been doing since he got the job. It's been recruiting nonstop. I think they've done a reasonably good job of holding on to some of the good players that Luke Fickell had committed to Cincinnati, including the quarterback that was part of this class. He's Mr. Football in Michigan, so great to get him to stay on board. I think they have 7 guys, if I'm not mistaken, that have announced plans to stay. There are a couple of guys that are still kind of considering their choices. And then several guys have either gone to Wisconsin or decided to go elsewhere. So that's what's going to happen in this situation. A couple of the recruits that Scott Satterfield had committed at Louisville have announced plans to come to Cincinnati. And then there's still plenty of openings for high school players and for transfers. So that's what they're working on. That's all they're working on. And I think so far it's gone about as well as you could hope, quite honestly.
All right, let's talk about the Bengals yesterday. The first half, you watched it. You're sitting there at halftime with your buddy Dave Lapham and your crew, and you're thinking what at halftime?
Well, you're thinking because of that field goal at the end of the half, at least they have some momentum. And we know that this is a team that isn't phased when they get behind in the first half, going back to last year and the playoff wins that they had and the regular season win over Kansas City as well. So that gave you some hope. honestly say I felt good about it, because until the final drive of the first half, I think the total yards were like 260 to 30. They were playing poorly. It looked like their injuries in the secondary were going to be a major problem. But credit Lou Anarumo and the defense. They adjusted. They started putting more pressure on Brady. How about 4 takeaways and 11 snaps in the third quarter against that guy? It was simply unbelievable. And although it wasn't a great day for the Bengals offense, starting with the field position they had in the second half, they were able to move it enough to punch it in 4 times and win the game.
You know, Dan, we were talking right before you came on. The tweet came out from down at Paycor that it looks like Sam Hubbard now with the calf injury left early in the game yesterday, did not return, that he is going to be out until the playoffs. And, of course, the Bengals are fighting for a divisional championship. Heck, they're fighting for a number 1 seed. How do you continue to explain this depth of this franchise? I mean, all the way from offense, defense, to the long snapper, to the punter, who's the same guy who's the holder. I mean, it seems like it never ends. Do you think there's still some guys all of a sudden we haven't talked about that we might be talking about?
Yeah, you might have to. I mean, Jeffrey Gunter now is probably going to step up and get more snaps if Sam Hubbard is out for the rest of the regular season. I think Trey Hendrickson is going to be back, probably not this week, maybe next week in the Monday night game against Buffalo, especially if he's, able to play with some sort of club on his hand that has the broken wrist. So you lose Sam, you might get Trey back, but yeah, more guys are going to have to take advantage of their opportunities. And I guess Jeffrey Gunter, who was a 7th-round draft pick this year, is probably next in line to at least be in the rotation. He's certainly not going to be at the top of the totem pole, but he probably starts getting some snaps.
Did you feel yesterday, Dan, and you mentioned, and we've talked about it a long time already today, the 4 takeaways, the turnovers. I just felt like, and for the life of me, I mean, I see it every single week in the NFL. And look, I mean, I've never been a coach, never will be a coach, not smart enough to be a coach, football coach. But, whether it's the New England game and the last play of that game, which I still cannot believe happened. I'm not sure anybody can believe it happened. But even the fake punt yesterday. Now, look, Todd Bowles can say it should have been a 4 or 5 yard run. They're ahead 17-3. They're punting. They haven't started this litany of turnovers yet. And instead of just snapping the ball to the punter, they're going to try something cute in their own territory. I just felt like you gave the Bengals a reason to get excited. I mean, the only thing, as you just pointed, they had to be excited about the whole game to that point, was the field goal before halftime.
Right. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what went wrong there. Clearly, Giovanni Bernard was not expecting the ball to be snapped to him. So in those fake punt situations, the personal protector, Giovanni Bernard in this case, has the freedom to call it off, or in some cases has the freedom to green light it. Gio took all of the responsibility when he was asked about it after the game, but that's probably him just covering for others. So for whatever reason that it was botched, that's one thing, but it should have never been called. You're that deep in your own territory, like you said, punt it, play defense. The Bengals to that point had one okay drive in the 2-minute drill out of 5 possessions in the first half. So too risky, didn't need to do it. You seem to have the game in pretty good control, and that definitely breathed life into the Bengals sideline. Even though they didn't score a touchdown after recovering that, it kept the momentum going in their direction, and from there on in, they dominated.
Dan, I'm kind of curious, and I'm not asking you to sit here and spill secrets in any way, shape, or form, because, you get a chance to ride on the Bengals team charter, just like I did with the Reds, all those years, or other baseball teams, what have you. But I'm just kind of curious, as an overall mood. You win the game, clearly taking advantage of the other team's mistakes. You also know that the injuries continue to pile up. You know what's coming. How would you describe the overall mood of the team at this? I mean, you've won 6 in a row, so how bad can it be? But right. You know what I'm getting at here. The Bengals are better than they were last year. I don't think there's any debate about that. Maybe you would disagree with me. I'd be curious maybe if you do. But I think they're better than they were a year ago. Does that mean they get to the Super Bowl? No, it doesn't. But I like their chances at this point in time this year better than last year. But what's the mood of the team right now, if there is such a thing?
Well, let me speak specifically to the mood yesterday, excuse me, because when I went down from the press box to the locker room to do post-game interviews, I was expecting it to be giddy. I was giddy. Lap was giddy. It was a great comeback. You beat Tom Brady when you're down 17 zip. That had never happened to him at home in his NFL career, spanning 23 years. So I walked in that locker room really expecting, like I said, a giddy mood. And that's not what I found. Sure, they were happy, but it was kind of businesslike, which surprised me. There was, some frivolity on the flight back to Cincinnati. Guys were happy playing cards, stuff like that. But it was less over the top excited than you might expect, considering what they had done. And I think that speaks well for the team in general. Zach Taylor in the postgame celebration made the speech. We're not giving out T-shirts and hats. We didn't clinch anything with this win. We're moving in the direction that we want to go. But I think the team has kind of picked up on that. And that's how I would describe the move. It's still unfinished business, even though they have climbed into first place in the division.
All right, Danny. Well, I want to thank you, as always, for your time. A very Merry Christmas to you and your family. I'm hoping you get back at a decent time from Foxborough after the game on Saturday to enjoy Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with your family. Merry Christmas to you, Danny. Thanks, as always, for everything.
Merry Christmas to you as well, Thom, and everybody there. And it's time to get my Christmas shopping started.
Yeah, well, that might help. That might be a good thing. That might be considering you got to leave Friday. You might want to get going.
One day.
Well, I don't want to hold you up. Get out the door and get rolling.